From Beyond Marketing, it's the 20-Minute Call, a podcast about the dreamers, boundary pushers, rebels, and champions of the skydiving industry. Each episode is a narrative journey highlighted by the highs, lows, and luck that the skydiving industry delivers, as told by the most influential people within the sport. If you've ever dreamed of becoming a skydiver, perhaps opening a drop zone, or becoming the next world champion, check out the 20-Minute Call hosted by me, James LeBarry. My guest today is a man whose life's journey spans continents, careers, and causes. Pancho Campo was born in Santiago, Chile, and over the years has built a remarkable career that bridges the worlds of sport, events, wine, and climate advocacy. He began in the world of professional tennis, serving as the captain and manager of the Chilean Olympic Tennis Team during the 1992 Barcelona Olympic Games. He has also held the role of national tennis director for the Qatar Tennis and Squash Federation and coached on the ATP Tour. Pancho went on to found Chrand Events, an international agency that has organized concerts, sporting events, and conferences around the world. Through his work, he has collaborated with global icons including Sting, Pink Floyd, Enrique Iglesias, the Gypsy Kings, among many others. In 2003, he founded the Wine Academy of Spain, and in 2008, he became the first Spanish-speaking person to achieve the coveted title of Master of Wine. In more recent years, Pancho has focused much of his energy on climate change awareness, organizing major conferences and initiatives alongside world leaders such as Al Gore, President Barack Obama, and Kofi Annan, using his experience in events to create meaningful platforms for dialogue and progress. Pancho Campo's career is a masterclass in reinvention, blending purpose, passion, and global perspective at every turn. Welcome to the 20-Minute Call, Pancho Campo.
Thank you, James. Thank you for that introduction.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you here, Pancho. I think let's frame this incredible life's work, your journey, with how we met. Firstly, last year in Poland at the European Skydiving Symposium, and then with more conversation recently at the PIA Symposium in Florida, where you talked about fear management. Let's begin there.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about your position on fear and your message about that.
I started analyzing, trying to understand fear, not only fear, but nerves, anxiety, because as a tennis player, I couldn't reach what I wanted to because my nerves played against me. My fear of losing or winning were my big enemies. And it got to a point it was so disgusting that I decided to quit and I became a coach. But I became a coach with a very, very clear purpose. I wanted to teach my players what I was not able to teach me, how to overcome nerves, anxiety, and fear. In those days, about 35 years ago, mental toughness training was something almost non-existent. So I achieved a lot of success with my players. I started with 3 ATP players, and I managed to get them all in the top 50 of the ATP, which, being in the top 100 is already a big achievement. But then, as I founded my company, Chrand Events, I had the opportunity of working with a lot of celebrities. And I always took the time to ask them, how do you deal with the stress? I sat down with Sting and I asked him, how do you do when you go in front of a crowd of 60,000 people again and again and again, week after week? Also with Vice President Al Gore, with Andre Agassi, with almost every celebrity that I have had the honor and the luck of working, I also spare some time to find out, what was their position in front of fear, in front of nerves, and controlling anxiety.
Fascinating. We're going to get a little bit deeper into that. But you mentioned, obviously, your time in tennis. And I want to know, how does one bridge the gap from growing up in Chile to getting into the world of tennis? You say you didn't perform or reach your full potential, but then to become a coach with very strong players. Just tell me about that background. Because one thing I've noticed about your story, Pancho, is at everything that you've done, whether it be in wine or events or in tennis, it's always at the highest level. And what I want to try to understand is your makeup. Like, where does this drive come from? Is this DNA? Is it genetic? Where is this level of success and this drive come from?
I think there is a bit of genetic because my father was a doctor. And in fact, everything started at medical school. I went to medical school. But the day I finished, I was doing my internship in Barcelona. But I was enrolled in a medical school in the Caribbean. The day I finished, I ran home to tell my parents that I have completed all my studies. I was ready to graduate and to tell my girlfriend that we could get married. Just to find out that my university had been invaded by the police a week earlier, and they raided the university because somebody accused them of fraud, selling degrees and transcripts. So I found myself with a full medical career, but no diploma. So that was a big blow to me because I had a scholarship to go to the Karolinska Hospital, the hospital that grants the Nobel Prize, the Medicine Nobel Prize. And I had another scholarship to spend a year with one of the professors that was a pioneer in anesthesiology, especially the epidural. And I was going to get married. So all that in minutes just faded away. And that was the first blow I had to encounter in my life. So I had no other choice than go back to tennis. And because my family was going through difficult monetary moments, and I didn't want to spend another 6 years, going back to medical school. Because when the military raided the university, in those days there were no computers, so everything was in paper, and they burned some of the rooms where all these files were kept. So I only managed to recover the first 2 years.
So, Pancho, describe yourself as a kid before just growing up. Do you have siblings? And
yeah,
was there any early indicators in your life that would suggest you would live the life that you have lived?
No, no. I had two sisters. I'm the older brother, the one that looks after the two girls. Since I was 6 or 7 years old, I knew I wanted to be a doctor, medical doctor. I wanted to be a surgeon or maybe an anesthesiologist like my father. My father was very much into sports. He taught me how to scuba dive, ride the bike, play tennis.
So, Pancho, I want to help me bridge the gap. You were raised or born in Chile, but were you raised in Spain?
My father, as I said, was a doctor. And, the first time that the Department of Anesthesiology was open in Barcelona, the professor of anesthesiology asked him to join him as his second on board. And we decided to move to Spain. Luckily for me, Barcelona in those days was the capital city of tennis, not only in Spain, but I would say in Europe. In any given day, you would find 10, 12 ATP ranked players at one of the clubs there. We moved to Spain when I was 14, 15, and that became home for my family. My mom has always lived in Spain. I have lived in different parts of the world. My sisters were brought up in Spain, but now one lives in the Canary Islands and the little one lives in Italy.
Fantastic. When you decided to become a tennis coach, how old were you at that time, coming out of the challenges of medical school not working out the way that you thought? And I also want to ask, what island was that? Because I'm from the Caribbean as well.
That was the Dominican Republic. I was about 24 when I decided to coach. I was already coaching as a part-time job to help my parents to pay my tuition, but I went into the ATP when I was about 30, maybe 29, 30. I started coaching at different clubs. I got my degree with the United States Professional Tennis Registry. I met a guy called Nick Bollettieri, who had the biggest academy in the world at the time, where guys like Agassi, Becker, the Williamses, Aaron Krigsting, Jimmy Arias, all those great players were developed. So I started working with him, and from there, from coaching and working for Bollettieri Tennis Academy, I had the opportunity to go on the tour. And that was 1990 is when I started coaching around the ATP.
Wow, yeah. Nick Bollettieri is certainly a well-known entity in the world of tennis, without question. And did you opened up a tennis academy in Spain as well, is that right?
I did. We opened. Actually, I was appointed the first director for the Bollettieri Tennis Academy in Europe. Then I opened my own tennis academy, Pancho Campo Tennis Academy. Then after '92, there was a big recession in Spain, and I got offered to move to Qatar, where I was the tennis director, but I was also the captain of the Davis Cup. And believe it or not, we won Davis Cup Division Three. It is Division Three, but still we won. And interestingly, in that team, I had two guys that now they're very famous. One is the current emir, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, that at the time he was 17, and then Nasser Al Khelaifi, who is the president of the famous French football team Paris Saint-Germain.
Incredible how much exposure you had at a relatively early age with such influential figures, certainly in tennis, and certainly well-positioned leaders of countries. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, I have to say that I've learned a lot with both Nasser and Tamim. Although I was their coach, I also had like a non-written clause in my contract to be the sports tutor of His Highness. And we shared a lot of times together. I mean, imagine when you train every day, 2 hours per day, and then during the weekends or when we were traveling, we spent endless hours. And I've learned a new culture. There was a big difference between the Islamic culture of the Gulf states in those days compared to the European culture where I was coming from. So that was a very nice time of my life where I learned a lot of things, not only in tennis but also from a human point of view.
If you're a DZO or DZM listening to this podcast and you're not using Burble, I've got a question. Why not? If the reason is price, what's the cost of your time? Other booking and manifest softwares are a one-size-fits-all. Burble was built from the ground up by a DZO for DZOs to maximize efficiency. Now, isn't that nice? There's no software that compares. Choose Burble. Burble. Pancho, it's interesting in looking at your career. It's punctuated by these different points. There's, as I mentioned previously, there's tennis. There's event management on a major level. There's the world of wine. It's extraordinary how these are punctuated by clearly defined different arenas.
Yeah.
So at what point did you decide to step out of tennis, and then was it event management thereafter?
Organizing events was something that I did already when I was in high school in Chile. I used to organize every year like a science fair for the students. And I love the logistics of organizing things, putting together the stands and organizing the people coming in. And as a tennis coach, I had a company with my ex-wife, and we would organize trips to Bollettieri and courses at Bollettieri. So the seed for event management was already there. So when I was in Dubai, I had a very large sports academy, Adidas Sports Academy. And I was more in the managerial position than actually coaching. And every year we would organize either a symposium for tennis coaches, a symposium about sports. And keep in mind that, coaching outdoors in Dubai most of the year is very hot. And I think I had enough of that harsh weather. And I wanted more a managerial kind of job. And that's when I decided to start organizing events. So we organized the Pepsi Football League, the Pro Beach Soccer, until one day Pepsi, who was one of my big sponsors, asked me, he said, Pancho, can you help us reach Enrique Iglesias? Because he had the number one in the charts with Whitney Houston at the time, 2000, the year 2000. And I said, listen, I can help you reach Enrique Iglesias, but with one condition, let me do the show. And the marketing manager said, what do you know about music? I said, I know nothing about music, but trust me, I will hire the best guy. And in those days, the former tour manager of Ozzy Osbourne lived in Dubai, had a production company. So we hired Nick, and he was the one that taught us everything that we knew at the time. How do you read a rider? How do you implement the ticketing, safety controls, sound, light? So that concert was so successful that from there was, the sky was the limit.
What's interesting to me, Pancho, is when you were playing tennis and you didn't reach your potential because of the mental fortitude aspect that at the time you didn't possess, but yet you have a lot of self-confidence. Like there's almost an audacity in saying, "Oh, you want me to get in touch with Enrique Iglesias? Yeah, no problem. And I'll put on the concert."
Yeah.
There's so much risk for failure there, but clearly you had self-confidence enough to say, "I can do this." Where does that self-confidence come from to say that you could pull off something so big?
I think it's because I always try to surround myself with the best possible people. The first person I reached out to was Nick Bollettieri. Who was the best coach at the time? Nick Bollettieri. I love music. I remember when I was studying medicine, music was always playing in the background. Pink Floyd, Sting, those was my idols. So when I decided to get into music, because, as an events manager, music is the biggest thing in the world. So immediately I got offers for Tom Jones, for Sting. So I was hanging out with the best possible people in the UK, and I learned from them. One of my mentors is a guy called Andrew Zvek. He used to manage Roger Waters, Depeche Mode, and he's a very well-respected guy. And he is probably the person who taught me everything about the business of being a promoter, a concert promoter. When I try to do something, I try to learn from the best possible people. And luckily, I had access to those people. And yeah, it paid off.
Was there a pinch me moment where you were putting on concerts for Pink Floyd and Gypsy Kings and Sting, people you used to listen to on the radio, and now you're in first-person conversations with these people? I mean, that must be surreal.
It was very surreal to organize Pink Floyd because that's like a dream come true for any promoter. Pink Floyd, the Rolling Stones, U2, those are names that not everybody has in the roster. So when I landed that gig, that was 6 months after September 11. My company almost went busted after September 11, and we had a very successful concert with Pink Floyd. But unfortunately, all the money went to pay debt that was originated by the September 11 attacks on New York. But when I landed Pink Floyd, I had this feeling of, wow, I'm going to work with one of my idols. Pink Floyd's still my favorite band in the world. And when I met Roger Waters, I remember he wanted me to go to the golf driving range with him because I organized the concert. I set up the venue in the Dubai Creek Golf driving range. And he was a big fan of golf. So, I said, listen, I'm not going to play golf with you. Although I play golf, I'm not going to play golf for you because I have a bad back. But I will accompany you because, the opportunity of talking to one of my, idols, lifetime idols, was second to none. And I enjoyed that concert. Like, it's still for me the biggest thing I ever done.
Pancho, you have engaged with some of the top talent in sports, certainly with tennis. Now with some of the world's most famous artists. What do you draw from why their performance for excellence? Because everybody wants to be a professional tennis player if you're into tennis. I draw a similar feel to you. I always wanted to be a player on the PGA Tour. I grew up in golf. I was a local club professional. I didn't have the mental fortitude to get there. So everybody wants to excel. What have you learned from those that are on the biggest stages of sport or entertainment?
First of all, they're not like us. They're different. If they were like us, there wouldn't be a difference. Second, talent is a big thing. You got to have a talent to sing like Sting or to compose like Roger Waters or to play like Andre Agassi. Third, when Andre Agassi was going through the roughest moments of his life was when he was less committed. When he really decided to commit to tennis, and he loved tennis because he hated the game for a while, that's when he made it really big, when he started enjoying. All these people, they enjoy very much what they do. They enjoy the challenge. They enjoy being under pressure. I think it's a combination of talent, hard work, and enjoying very much what you do. Andre was an exception. Andre was, he became a star, although he hated the game, and especially because his father was very demanding. But he re-encountered himself after he married Steffi Graf because he learned to love tennis And when he retired, he was madly in love with the game. And he was happy because when he broke into the tour, the first years he was okay, but then he was achieving success, but at a very high cost, mental health. And that was because he was playing for the wrong reasons. He was not playing because he loved the game. He was playing because his father almost pushed him to play.
I read his biography.
Amazing, huh? That book is amazing.
An amazing book, and I encourage anyone, even though this is a skydiving-focused podcast necessarily, there's so much to learn there, and I will say that his vulnerability and honesty in that book was inspiring. It was truly extraordinary. So, Pancho, you are now on the top of the world of entertainment, and then there is another major career shift. If I'm not mistaken, you go from event management into the world of wine. How did we get there?
No, we continue with event management because I wanted to organize a large wine-related conference. I created an event called Wine Future, which has been one of the largest summits in the world of wine. And that was the result of the economical crisis of 2008. I wanted to get the luminaries of the wine world to analyze what was going on with the economy and offer solutions. And the same thing with the first World Conference on Climate Change and Wine. Nobody was talking about that at the time. So I decided to organize a conference that would bring together scientists, Nobel Prize winner, meteorologists, wine luminaries to analyze how was climate change impacting the wine industry, how we foresee that it's going to affect in years to come. But most importantly, what can you do to mitigate and adapt to the climate crisis? But because I had a passion for wine, I always liked studying wine, drinking wine, visiting wine regions. I decided, okay, if we're going to do this, let's do it properly. Which is the highest degree in wine? Master of Wine. Who has it in Spain? Nobody. Okay, that will give me an advantage. That will give me an edge. So I went all the way to become Master of Wine, but mostly because I wanted to, if I was going to lead a company doing big events in wine, I wanted to have the knowledge, the background, and the respect.
So for those that are listening, if you're unfamiliar with a Master of Wine title, there's roughly just a little over 400 people in the world.
Well, that's now, because when I became Master of Wine, I was 286.
Right, and I've read the examination for this designation is so difficult, and the reason why so few people are able to get this. How can you just share a little bit of detail in the preparation for the examination of getting the title Master of Wine? Because I've read that people are driven to drink with the stress of trying to earn this designation.
First of all, you don't undergo an MBA or a master. You have to go there to prove that you are entitled to name a Master of Wine. So to do that, you have to undergo 4 years of preparation to sit the exam, which consists of 3 days of blind tasting. That means you get 12 wines, completely blind. You know nothing about the wines. And you have to give, with reasoning, for example, which are the grape varieties in wines number 1, 2, and 3, with reasoning. Or you can say, where do they come from? Or please explain, according to what you smell and taste in the glass, what has the winemaker done as far as aging, barrels, etc. And then you have 4 days of theory, where day 1 is viticulture, day 2 is winemaking, day 3 is business and marketing, and day 4 is contemporary issues. And you got to write 3 essays in a very British way. And the questions can go, it can be anything in the world of wine. Basically, you have to learn everything there is about wine. That's why it takes 4 years to get you ready to sit the exam. But the passing rate is so low. I mean, I think last year only 1 or 2 became Master of Wine out of 200 and something.
Clearly, you are very intelligent and driven. Were you a great student?
Only if I liked what I was studying. If I didn't like it, I was dreadful. So I did like medicine, but there were subjects in medicine at the beginning of the career, like biostatistics, things like that. That I don't like this. So my father said, "Listen, stepping stones. If you want to get to internal medicine surgery, you're going to have to pass this. Otherwise, you will never make it to real thing. I want to be in the hospital. I want to be in the surgery room. So I've learned that sometimes you gotta go through those stepping stones. Wine was for me was a passion. I mean, I love wine. I love tasting wine. That's why I passed the practical exam was with flying colors, the first attempt. But because I was enjoying, I was having fun. For me, it was not a job. It was not a study. It was having fun.
Many are familiar with being a master sommelier, which is also very difficult. And in my research of you, really, there neither being a master of wine or master sommelier, one is greater than the other. Just one is more focused on sort of in-house restaurant, and you more on the viticulture aspect of it, and even the business and economics of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
One thing that was interesting to me, Pancho, is your ability again to put on such big events, but that it also included the issue of climate change and how it was affecting the wine world. And this has definitely become an ongoing passion for you with the environmental crisis. What was the seed planted for your interest to be a driving force there?
Outdoors, I love even skydiving. Most people that we practice skydiving, we love the environment. I started caring about the environment. So more than climate change was my concern about the damage that we are inflicting to the planet. I have been diving under hundreds of meters of garbage, of papers, masks from the pandemic, empty cans. And I think, we don't do this at home. Why do we have to do it when we go swimming or scuba diving? So I decided that, in life, I'm very thankful. I've had a lot of bad episodes in my life, but I'm very happy because I have a fantastic wife, 2 kids, great family, and the experiences that I have lived, that you have to be thankful and try to give back to your peers and society. And I thought, okay, this is going to be my mission. Try to create awareness of 2 things. One, we have to protect the environment. Not so much climate change, because that's very politicized nowadays, very polarized. But protecting the environment is something that you will never have anybody against you when you're trying to have a more clean planet. And the other one is we need to protect the mental health of our youth, especially because my daughter suffered bullying. That triggered my interest, plus my struggle to control my nerves and my anxiety. I thought, okay, those are going to be the 2 pillars of my foundation. And I go around the world, doing expeditions to analyze the environment and then record documentaries that then I use in speeches at schools and universities to try to create awareness of how important it is to protect the environment.
I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into those topics, because I did read that certainly bullying is part of your messaging. But to stay on point with the environmental aspect of it, here you were in the world of wine. You put a conference on about how the environmental crisis that we're under is affecting the wine world, and somehow you capture the attention of Al Gore, and then later President Obama and Kofi Annan from the United Nations. How in the world are you now connecting with literally the biggest names on the planet?
This is funny. That's a nice story, actually. Though we didn't get the response, every single media was there. Discovery Channel, National Geographic, BBC, and of course, all the wine media. Who is this crazy guy from Spain talking about climate change in wine? What has one thing to do with another? And funny enough, 3 weeks after the conference finished, I get a call from the office of the Climate Reality Project, which is a foundation developed by Vice President Al Gore. Basically, they wanted to invite me to a training program that Vice President Gore was conducting in Seville in September. This was maybe March, April. And also because the Vice President wanted to meet me and understand what was the relationship between climate change and the wine industry. So off I go to Seville. I attended the training. I was so impressed with not only with him, but the whole group of scientists that were surrounding the Vice President. So the information was very scientific. And I met the man. He was really, really, he was generous. He was open. He had a real interest on learning how climate change is impacting the world of wine. So what I did is I convinced him to be my keynote speaker in the second edition of the conference. And the conference was happening 2 years later. At that time, he had not yet released the documentary that won the Oscar. So I got him for a very good price. In those 18 months leading to the conference, this guy goes out there and wins the Nobel Peace Prize, wins the Oscar, wins the biggest award in Spain, which is the Prince of Asturias. So when he arrives in Barcelona in March 2008, he was probably the most famous human on the face of the earth. So my conference that had 120 delegates on the first edition, most of them invited, we went up to 900 from 60 or 70 different nationality because Al Gore was there. So suddenly the Wine Academy of Spain, which was a two-man show, suddenly we're running this huge event with the Vice President of the United States. So that allowed us to recover the money that we've lost in the first edition and gave us the energy and the funds to continue doing a third, a fourth, and a fifth edition later on, with Kofi Annan in 2013, with President Obama in 2018, and again with Vice President Gore in 2019, right before the pandemic.
Pancho, have you ever seen the movie Forrest Gump?
No, it's my favorite movie. It's my wife's and I's favorite movie.
Okay. Well, then we share this in common. My favorite movie. And when I think about the careers, the many careers that Forrest has lived, from buying that Apple stock and meeting presidents and having Dr. Pepper, I couldn't help but think about in every arena, tennis and event management with Pink Floyd and meeting President Obama and Kofi Annan. This is a crazy life you've lived here, Pancho.
The responsibility of organizing the visit of a former president of the United States was the biggest I've ever had. And it was really nice working with the Secret Service and his advance team. Really nice people. I spent a week having breakfast, lunch, and dinner with all of them. It's like in the movies. I mean, the Secret Service behaves just like in the movies.
If you're a fan of the 20-Minute Call, I'd like to invite you to be a member of a budding community with me on Patreon. By becoming a patron of the show, you can join me behind the scenes to discuss options for future guests and gain access to some show swag. It's pretty sweet. Details on how to become a patron can be found in the show notes. Okay, back to the show. Pancho, when we talk about these things, we hear about the end result. They were so successful. All these things, but tell me about the stress. Tell me about the sleepless nights. Did you experience, what was the levels of stress of hosting an event with a former president? What if it all goes wrong? Tell me a little bit behind the scenes of what one has to endure when doing such high-profile events.
Yeah, I was approached by a company called Taylor's. They're big pork producers. They wanted me to take my climate change conference to Porto in Portugal. So one day, the CEO of the company invites me for lunch together with the mayor of the city. And he said, listen, we're willing to support you, but I have one demand. You have to bring President Barack Obama. Do you have access? I said, yes, I do. Do you have the money? Because it's not cheap to organize an event of that caliber. He said, don't you worry about the money. If you secure President Obama, we will deliver. And they did. I mean, working with Portugal was something amazing. Ultra professional people. But my biggest concern was, at the time, I was in the list of wanted people by Interpol. You've read the story. It was something totally unjust. My fear was, if the Secret Service finds out this, maybe they turn us down. I have to be clear with the mayor. I have to be clear with my partners in Portugal. In the best case scenario, President Obama will come, but I will not be allowed into the arena where he is going to be performing. That was July 2018. In December 2017, my name gets cleared from Interpol, and I am proven totally innocent, and the UAE are proven guilty of breaching 5 of my rights. And that was published all over the world. I mean, there was 4 pages in the Daily Mail in London, in Spain. But my fear was still there because I was somebody that at one point had a red notice from Interpol. As I'm working with the group the group behind President Obama, I've learned that all the people that are going to be in the same building have to send passport photocopies for a background check. Not only that, all the 3,000 guests that were going to listen to President Obama had to send passport photocopies and go through a Homeland Security, Secret Service, FBI background check. I thought, this is not going to fly. Until the day I got the letter saying, Pancho, you have been cleared not only to be in the same venue with President Obama, his team has demanded that you lead the organization 10 days before, you liaise with the Secret Service, you liaise with the advance team. For me, that was the biggest proof that my name had been cleared 100%, proven totally innocent. And that's the day I went, I can work with President Obama and there are not going to be any issues. Although my team could handle the event, it's not the same if I am there than if I am not. Because at the end of the day, I have a great team, but they expect me to lead them, which we did. And it was very successful.
Pancho, congratulations, extraordinary. I want to lean in a little bit to the Interpol situation. I want to say that hung over your head for about 12 years. Is that about right?
Yeah.
And I'll let my listeners, I won't go into the details of it because that in itself is a whole nother podcast, I think.
It could be, yeah.
But when you're...
Yeah, go ahead.
But my question here is, it's a major thing, obviously, when Interpol flags your name and the challenges that puts on, or the pressure that puts on one person when your character, your integrity is being questioned. Man, that is got to be a low point, particularly when it first happened. What I'm curious to know is, how did you work through that mentally? Because everything I've read about you is you're a tirelessly hard worker, trying to do big things, achieving those big things. And as you're sort of at the top of your game, now everything is being questioned in a major way. And that has to lead to some really difficult sleepless nights. How were you able to live and continue to work while this is hanging over your head?
It was difficult. It was very difficult. But luckily, I had my family next to me, especially my wife. Melissa was great. Melissa was the most supportive thing in the world. And we always said, Pancho, we know you're innocent. The truth shall prevail. And one day you will prove your innocence. Until then, do not bring yourself down. Keep on fighting. Sports played a major role in my life. There's a book that I just read, which is finally the scientific proof of how sports can help anxiety, depression, and difficult times. It's called Spark. I recommend anyone to read it. It's a bit technical from the scientific point of view, but it's a fantastic read. But it was, first of all, to convince myself that I've done nothing wrong. Second, the support of my family, my whole family, because they are part of my team. My company is run by my sister, my brother-in-law, my 2 nephews, my daughter, my son, and my wife in those days. Third, the support of my wife. And the only thing that I didn't want to, I had 2 very young kids. I had Andrea, which was 9 at the time this whole thing came onto the press, and Kristen was very young. Kristen was maybe 4 or 5. I didn't want them to see me down because they needed their father, and they needed their father in top shape. So I made an extra effort not to fall, not to be depressed, and to wake up in the morning and I remember my wife would give me a pat in the back, Pancho, it's one day less. It's not one day more, it's one day less. That's how we dealt with it. And you cannot imagine the day that my lawyer told me that I was, I'm getting emotional. The day my lawyer told me that I was a free man, I will never forget that. I'll never forget that. Finally, after 12 and a half years, I was proven innocent. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. What we went through, that's why if you ask me, do you consider now yourself mentally tough? Because I didn't consider myself mentally tough when I was a tennis player. I think my mind is like a rock now. And I wanna share it through my speeches, through my book, trying to help people that have gone through similar episodes, maybe with the law, maybe with cancer or a disease.
Pancho, when I was thinking about your situation, when you were on that list with Interpol, you were not allowed to really travel to many countries, including the US. And I just saw you in Daytona Beach recently for PIA. I thought to myself, I wonder what that first trip must have been like for Pancho entering the US. Even though that you are free and clear, I have to imagine that there was nerves going, entering the US for the first time since your name was cleared.
Oh my God, I'll never forget that. I mean, when I got my visa from the American embassy, because I was denied entry in Chicago, I was sent back, and they told me from now on you're going to have to get a visa. And while the red notice was active, the United States would not issue a visa for me. So finally, in 2018, I got a 5-year B1, B2 visa. And the first time we went, the four of us, Melissa, the two kids, and I. And I remember when I entered Miami, my daughter looked at me and said, "Daddy, you're not going to cry?" I said, I'm about this close to cry, but I am so happy. Because you have to understand that although I'm not American, my wife is an American citizen. My kids are American citizens. I have done business with the United States, and I love the country. So for me, not being able to go back was very difficult. I spent 10 years without going to the U.S.
Such an extraordinary story. And somewhere in all of this, you are introduced to skydiving. Tell me
my God, skydiving!
How are you introduced to that?
Listen, I should have started skydiving many years ago. The one thing that prevented me from skydiving earlier was probably the Interpol issue. My mind was only focused on surviving the best possible way, trying to solve the red notice issue. I remember thinking about skydiving when I was 19, 20. I'm going to try this. I was in scuba diving. I was in tennis. I said, one day I will try it. And I kept delaying it. I remember 3 years in a row, I tried to do it. And because it was the hurricane season in Miami, it got canceled 3 times. The fourth time I went to skydive Spain, and they refused me because I was already 50 years of age. So I waited another 5 or 6 years. Finally, I called Madrid, and they told me, "Oh, we don't have an issue if you bring a medical certificate saying that you are perfectly healthy to skydive." So off I go, and I got my AFF at the age of 61. Then I went back to Skydiver Spain and said, "Guys, now you have to take me because I already have my AFF, and there's nothing in your rules that prevents a 61-year-old man." So I got my A license, my B license, and my C license in Skydiver Spain, which is now my skydiving home. And I have enjoyed every single minute. Even when I broke my fibula, I enjoyed it.
Extraordinary. And you recently did a halo jump from 25,000 feet as well.
Yeah, that was, I was looking for places where to go skydiving in the summer because I always, with my wife, she knows that, I like to take 1 week off where I do things that I only like to do in the family, like scuba diving in the cenotes in Mexico. But this year was skydiving. So I looked at Boss, I looked at Balaton, and then I see this halo jump in Denmark with Pierre-Henry de Baer and his wife Nadia. And I thought, wow, this is something I really want to do. So I look at the requirements. I had them, you need 200 jumps. I had 240 at the time. But then the people that work with me in my PR and with my social media said, "Pancho, you know that this could be something really great to bring attention to the causes of your foundation, the bullying, the nerves, maybe you should prepare yourself. We can record it. We can do a little documentary and do it because of bullying, do it to bring attention to bullying. So we did, and I never imagined that we were going to have such a media impact. I mean, in Spain, I was in all the news. I was in all the big newspapers because this old man was jumping from a plane from 25,000 feet, just trying to bring attention to bullying. I must say that has been, it's one of my top 3 or 5 experiences in life. It was amazing.
You wanted to bring awareness to bullying through skydiving with that particular event. Why is the topic of bullying so important to you? You mentioned your daughter was bullied?
Yeah, she doesn't like me to talk about this, so we're going to keep it brief. She was bullied for several years, and she's 25 years old now. She's got a great job. I'm very proud of her. She got her degree from FIU, Chaplin School of Hospitality, and now she's finishing psychology. But you can still see as a father that there was still some remains of that difficult period. And because my wife owns a school, the American College in Spain, we see that kids nowadays, every day, they suffer from ADHD, anxiety, fear, and the extreme is bullying. Although my wife is zero tolerance with bullying, you see that it's something that is not as common as when I was a kid. So that's why for me, from a personal point of view, and also, because I see it in my wife's school, I thought this is, and it's one of the 2 legs of my foundation, the mental health of a new generation. I thought, let's do more things to bring awareness to this problem. But not only bullying, ADHD, anxiety, and fear. A lot of kids, they have fear of becoming entrepreneurs, fears of going into certain careers, fear before their exams. So it's something that has become so prevalent that if I can help them with my experience, and look at me, I have faced fear many times. I have to do it. It's my duty. It's my obligation.
Tell me about your fitness, because you have identified you started skydiving at 61. You're now 63. You are very fit, Pancho. I've met you in person. Your appearance is much younger than the 63-year-olds that I once knew growing up.
I work a lot on my legs because your knees and your ankles go as you age. So the best way to protect your knees is to make your thighs stronger. I keep a very healthy diet because of my sports past, but also because I have had cholesterol, high cholesterol, familiar cholesterol since I was 16 years old. So I gotta keep a diet. You realize that you feel much better, you look much better than a lot of your friends at the same age, and you can skydive, you can scuba dive, you can do a lot of things that a lot of people at my age wouldn't even think about it. So keeping fit for me, it's my number 1 priority in life from a personal basis. Keeping fit physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. I mean, this is something I believe in. It's a table with 4 legs: the mental, the physical, the spiritual, and the emotional. And on top of that table is everything you care about: your family, your matrimony, your kids, your life, your home, your job. So you gotta keep those 4 legs from prevent them from shaking or breaking.
Huge insights there, Pancho. I will probably go back and listen to that part again. That is, I think, some key foundations for living a good life. Tell me, Pancho, would you say your success is a result of hard work? And I'm stealing from my favorite podcast called How I Built This. But I feel I'm going to ask, you're the first person I've asked this question to. Would you say that your success is based on luck or hard work?
I'm not a great believer in luck. I have probably a different definition of luck. For me, luck is being in the right place at the right moment, but with the right preparation. If you are somebody that has tremendous knowledge, but you are not in the right place and not at the right moment, then 2 things can happen. You're going to fail, or you're left with only one option. You have to look for that opportunity. I think opportunities, and that I'm good at. I am good at looking for the opportunity. When I wanted to reach Vice President Al Gore, I went looking for him, and you can find him. The same thing when I'm Enrique Iglesias. I had the people who could help me organize the concert, therefore the knowledge. I had the people who could pay for it, which was Pepsi. I just needed to find somebody that can run it, and that was Nick Chapman. So for me, it's I always try to prepare myself the best possible way. That's why I have always reached out for the best possible coaches, the best possible people. Same skydiving. No, I was very lucky when I was in Florida last month. I went back jumping after my injury, and I took a course with Ginny Bartholomew, 4 times world champion. You can't get any better than that. So yeah, that's my approach. You gotta make your own luck.
Final question for you, Pancho. I'm always curious about crossroads moments in life. A major crossroads moment that I've shared on this podcast before is when I was a golf pro and there was a van that just happened to show up one evening that said Skydive Carolina Parachute Center. And the very small detail of me putting my business card on that windshield of that vehicle forever changed the trajectory of my life. That simple little act. And the way I define a crossroads moment is maybe you say yes to something, or maybe you say no to something, or maybe you happen to meet someone that might feel inconsequential at the time, but that person changes the trajectory of your life. Can you think of a crossroads moment that had you not said yes, or had you not said no, or had you not met a specific person, it's likely you and I are not speaking today?
I could have just given up on trying to skydive up because I was getting rejected because of my age. I could have just said, "Listen, I'm going to come to terms that I am 50 or more, and maybe I'm too old for this." And honestly, I would have missed a very important part of my life. Number one, because skydiving, I think, is a great sport. It gives you not the adrenaline, it gives you the dopamine, which is the real thing, that one looks as a reward. Second, you have if you want to be a safe skydiver, you got to use all your senses, be alert, and you have to be very cautious. You have to be very thoughtful about everything you do because at the end of the day, you're putting you're risking your life. But one thing that amazes me about skydiving, and I go back to your question, I would have never experienced this. The community of people that I have encountered in skydiving is different from tennis, is different from scuba diving. I remember, just to give you an example of what I'm trying to say, I was sitting at the door of the plane on my way to my hop and pop with Ginny Bartholomew. Right in front of me is Kurt Bartholomew, 9 times world champion. I'm thinking, I would have never been sitting in this situation with Rafa Nadal or Roger Federer. In scuba diving, if you're a technical scuba diver like me, there's a little bit of a, nose up. I have asked for advice guys with 12,000 jumps, and I had only 35, and they were keen to help me, to instruct me. And at the drop zone, you run into people from all sorts different backgrounds. Doctors, young kids that are just trying to start and make a career, a janitor that makes an effort to pay for all the skydiving because it's not cheap, let's be honest, but we're all the same. And I don't know, I just love that spirit that skydiving has, that we all try to help each other. The ritual of shaking hands before we're going to jump, that doesn't happen in any other sport. We do it with people that we have never seen in our life, and maybe we will never see again, but we wish each other the best of luck before we're going to make a jump. That I would have missed tremendously if I hadn't insisted in that crossroad with skydiving.
This podcast is sponsored by Beyond Marketing, the digital marketing agency for the skydiving industry. Now, I'm not a fan of lots of ads during a podcast. I mean, who likes ads? So I'll stop talking about how marvelously wonderful Beyond Marketing is. But if you're curious about what the amazing people of Beyond Marketing do to help drop zones and manufacturers thrive, then you should check out their website at dropzone.marketing. That's dropzone.marketing. Pancho, wow, I have really enjoyed learning about you, your journey. I appreciate your humility, despite so much success. and the lessons learned in terms of facing adversity, coming out on the other side. This has been a much more enriching conversation than I initially thought. I thought we were going to just talk about all your highs and your successes, but the reality or the connection I feel to you because you've been open about the challenges and how you've overcome them, because we all want the greatness, but we all have to go through a challenge, and you've been through some major ones and have come out on the other side to live to tell the tale, and for us to learn from your experiences. And thank you for that. This has been an enlightening conversation.
It's been a great conversation. I have enjoyed it too. Not to make advertising, but I am publishing a book with all these stories that we have just touched upon. They're all there. It's 14 chapters. With each chapter, it gives you a little tip on how to deal with fear and stress and anxiety. But it's accompanied by a personal story. My medical career, my Interpol issue, my kidnapping in South Africa, my conversations with the different people that I have learned with. I'm hoping that I can translate it into English as soon, and I will be happy to send you a copy of the book, which I'm very proud because I wrote it myself. I'm not a big writer, but I got help. When I read it, I can see me talking. Everything that all the proceedings from that book will go to our foundation, because I believe that I've been very blessed. I've been very lucky. Just the fact that tomorrow I'm going to jump out of a plane, it just makes me happy. So I want to be able to inspire people with the many things that I have lived throughout my life, good and bad.
What is the name of the book?
Smile, because two reasons. Stands for stress, motivation, inspiration, leadership, and energy, which are 5 key elements in my life. But also because with a smile, you cannot be stressed.
Fantastic. And I'm going to ask you to forgive me, and also I'm going to ask my audience to forgive me, but you just said something that got my attention, and I know has gotten the attention of my listeners. You were kidnapped in South Africa. I cannot have us exit this without understanding this story.
That's an interesting story, because my wife and I, we thought that we have lived everything. And that made me realize that not because I was out of Interpol, I could leave my guard down. I was in South Africa with my company. We were hired to organize an event about the environment, especially water resources, because Cape Town was about to run out of drinking water. So they invited me to do a press conference and to work in the event and to officially launch the event and announce that Arnold Schwarzenegger was going to be the keynote speaker, not as the Terminator, but as the former governor of California. So I did the speech. I arrived on a Wednesday. I arrived on a Thursday. I did the speech that same day in the afternoon. And the next day, I went scuba diving. In those days, like today, I carry my parachute everywhere I go. In those days, I used to carry my scuba diving gear. And I wanted to dive with seals and sea lions, which is something that you do in Cape Town. So I did this. And when I finished, friends of mine called me and said, Pancho, we realized that today is Spain National Day, October the 12th. And we were so thankful for the amazing job you did yesterday at the press conference that we would like to organize a typical braai, which is a typical barbecue from South Africa. I said, yeah, fine. Where are you? He said, oh, we're in this place. Okay, it will take me like 2 hours to get there. It's an organization in the outskirts of Cape Town. So I go there. It's like 6 o'clock in the afternoon. We do a late lunch, early dinner. And when we finished, the owner of the apartment said, I got a big collection of wine. Would you mind coming with me to my house? I want to show you some of the wine because you're a master wine. So we went. And suddenly I start feeling really tired. And I said, guys, I think it's time for me to go back, because between the jet lag, the conference yesterday, and the scuba diving today, I'm a bit exhausted. But my phone is not working properly. Would you mind ordering an Uber? So my friend Frank orders the Uber. He said, Pancho will be here in 10 minutes, but because it's night, it's 10 o'clock at night already, you have to go to the main gate and wait for the Uber at the security gate where the officer is. He said, yeah, no problem, don't worry. It's a beautiful night. It was like 25 degrees. So I walk and I reach the door. Guy comes out and said, are you the guy waiting for the Uber? Yes. What's your name? Pancho Campo. Okay. He'll be here in no time. After 5 minutes, he comes out again and he said, listen, your car is in the roundabout, but if you don't want to wait, it's just 200 yards from 300 yards from here. I say, listen, don't worry. Where's the car? There's the car. Oh, I walk. So I go to the car. I open the door. The first thing that gets my attention is there's two guys, the driver and somebody else. And I thought, well, maybe it's a security feature because it's at night. I didn't think much of it. And then the car was really filthy and smelly. But I was so tired, I just wanted to go to the hotel. I knew that my wait was going to take about 45 minutes. So 45 minutes go by, 50 minutes go by, and I look around, and we are not even close from downtown Cape Town. I said, guys, are you lost? And they said, yes, we're lost. So I get my phone trying to get some kind of Wi-Fi, 3G, 4G, 5G. At this moment, the guy that is sitting next to the driver turns around, grabs my phone, and he leans forward, and I can see from the back seat that he's trying to pair his telephone with mine. Maybe stealing my codes, my password, I don't know. I said, give me my phone, give me my phone. But I also see that my wife is calling, and he presses the red button, and I get really angry. I say, dude, don't hang up on my wife, give me back my fucking phone. Sorry, I used the F word. The guy gets really upset, turns around, and he's holding a gun. And at gunpoint, he said, you know what? Give me all the money that you have. We're sick and tired of you Europeans, white people coming here to take advantage of our black. So I have a gun in my face. And at the same time, the guy again presses the red button. And for the third time, I said, listen, please, my wife is calling. Please, I'll give you all the money that I have. I had $80. That's not enough. Let's go to an ATM. I didn't realize that he had pressed the green button on the phone, and my wife is listening everything from Spain as I beg for my life. I beg you, I have two children, I have a wife, I'll give you all the money that you want. Well, time goes by, they have me at gunpoint. Suddenly, I believe that the driver realized that they were going to get into so much trouble if they shoot me, that he stopped the car. He comes running out, pulls me out of the car, bang my head against the frame, and then he throws me, and I hit my back against one of the light posts. And the car goes away, and I'm thinking, oof, thank you, God, But I'm really, really in pain. I realize I'm in the middle of nowhere. It's pitch black. It was cloudy. I couldn't see Table Mountain that could serve me as a landmark. So I start walking, and then I decided I'm going to run a little bit, to speed it up. So I pace myself, and I'm running. I honestly think I was running for about 50 minutes, 45, 50 minutes. Suddenly I see these red lights, and I thought, that looks like a gas station. Let me go towards that. So as I'm coming out of the road, I see some houses on the left, dark, and I see what it looked like a gas station. I started going towards those houses, and it's so dark and so scary, it looks so dodgy. I said, I'm not going to go there. So I go to the gas station thinking, what about if it's closed? I will hide. So when I'm reaching the gas station, a police car passes by, and I stop the car. So there's the typical Afrikaans guy, red-headed, tall guy. I said, what happened? Tell me. So I tell him what happened. Said, listen, I'm going to take you to the police station, which is right next door. The first thing that surprised me, he said, you're so lucky, because if you would have come to this side of the road, this is considered the most dangerous neighborhood in the whole of Africa. Luckily, I went towards the other side. So I get to the gas station, and the police said, Mr. Campo, we're not going to take your declaration today because you are under severe shock. I said, what are you talking about? What shock? He said, look at your arms and look at your legs. I was shaking. And he said, if you have been running in this weather, although it's at night, it's about 25, 26 degrees Celsius, how come your face is completely dry? You don't have any sweat on your armpits? You're totally dry. Mr. Campo, just sit down, relax, we'll take you back to the hotel. Then at that moment, I broke down, I started crying. They gave me water. I swallowed almost a liter and a half of water. And after half an hour, I calmed myself down. They took me back to the hotel. It took them like 45 minutes with the woo, woo, woo. I get to the hotel. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. Light is coming out. This whole thing started around 11. And I see that the reception is crowded with people. So I thought, well, maybe it's a group of people coming in. No, they're all there because of me. My wife called the hotel and woke up the general manager, and they were all going crazy. So when I come out of the police car, I said, Mr. Campo, yes, please come quickly. You have to call your wife. I said, but my wife doesn't know anything. I don't want her to know until I tell her. I got to calm down. I said, no, your wife knows everything. She was on the phone listening to you begging. So that was the story. And the next day, the police came to me, and one of the policemen took my declaration, and he says, Mr. Campo, are you a believer? Do you believe in God? He said, listen, I'm not a big believer, but I know that my father is up there looking after me. He said, well, he's looking very well after you, because in this country, 9 out of 10 people that go through what you did can't tell the story. So that was my kidnapping in South Africa.
Oh my gosh. Ooh, Pancho, I just lived that through your eyes, through your telling, just completely living in pictures. It's crazy. Wow.
Not a funny story. The only good thing about this story was that because I have learned so much about dealing with Interpol and dealing with the stress and with anxiety, I told myself, I'm going to erase this from my mind, and I will tell the story to people, but it will not affect me. And I think only one night I had some flashbacks that I woke up in the middle of the night because I was dreaming that I was in the middle of a very dark place, which was when they left me in the middle of the road. But apart from that, I put it on one side of my mind where don't bother me.
I look forward to either me learning Spanish or for the English translation of your book to come out, because this has been just such an extraordinary conversation, Pancho. Thank you for your time and your willingness to share that story along with all your others. It's an amazing life you've lived.
Thanks to you, James. It's great to be in your podcast.
Thank you. It's an honor. Hey, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to the 20-Minute Call podcast. Please do follow us on your podcast app so you always have the latest episode, which is released every Monday. If you want to contact the team, our email address is podcast@beyondmarketing.xyz. This episode was edited and engineered by Garnet Znydrick of the YouTube channel Blue Skies Fun Days. Thanks for listening, and join us next week for our next episode.